Welcome back, America. It's a great honor to have Governor Kristi Noem here, the first time on this program, second time I've ever interviewed her, once on radio and now. You have a fantastic new book out that I've read, Not My First Rodeo, Lessons from the Heartland. Kristi Noem, you're considered one of the great governors in this country. It's a small state, and yet you're one of the standout governors. Why do you think that is?
Well, Mark, I think it depends on who you talk to, but I will tell you that our people in South Dakota are incredibly happy, and I would say it's because they're free. You know, we've seen incredible changes in our country the last several years. We've watched the media use fear to control people, and the left use fear to promote an agenda that's fundamentally remaking the America that we live with each and every day. So throughout this pandemic in South Dakota, I made very different decisions than most of the other governors. We never did any mandates, never once shut down any businesses or said people couldn't have gatherings, never once even defined what an essential business was, told people we would trust them based on what authority I had under the Constitution, and didn't grab other authority that I did not have. And we're seeing the results of that in South Dakota. So it's interesting when you look from state to state and see how they're doing today. We're leading the country with our economy. Our kids are outperforming kids in every other state in educational outcomes. I have less than 700 people in South Dakota that are on unemployment today because when the president offered those elevated unemployment benefits, we were the only state that said no thank you. Our people want to work. So, you know, it's an experiment in what our founders envisioned this country would look like. In South Dakota, we actually did it. And now I think it's bringing hope to the rest of the country. We've got people moving to South Dakota in record numbers, and they're moving there because they want to be like us.
You see, the federal government here wants to get in the face of these states in every direction, whether it's health care, whether it is the economy, whether it is natural resources and so forth, farming, ranching. You look at this, you look at the inflation rate. What can a state like South Dakota do to fight that sort of thing? I mean, you're a lady from the Midwest. It's a little state. It's a small population. The economy is relatively small. And then you have this iron fist of central government constantly trying to shut down your activities.
I am so grateful that the last several years, when I was going through the pandemic, other challenges in South Dakota as governor, that President Trump was in the White House, because I was able to be on offense every single day. I was out there with a president that was letting me do my job, and I was able to focus on economic development, focus on making sure that our state was low regulations, that we were low taxed. It's been a complete fundamental change since Joe Biden went into the White House. All we've dealt with now is being on defense. And my best tool that I have as governor, now, if I don't have somebody in the White House that understands their job and leaving us alone as states, is that I have to sue them. I have to use the federal court system to push back on their overbearing, regulations, mandates that are coming down and impacting my people. For instance, they just recently told us, Mark, I don't know, we have the strongest bill in the country that we just signed into law to protect girls' sports, to say only biological females could play in women's sports in our state. And this White House has threatened to take away all of our school lunch resources for poor and underprivileged kids if we don't comply with their mandates. So it's interesting to me that not only have they hurt my timber contracts to crush my lumber industry, not only have they mandated certain activities on their federal lands, such as national parks and Bureau of Land Management practices, not only are they coming forward with higher taxes and more spending, they're also coming out and to create a leftist agenda that's extreme. They're willing to hurt children to create an unfair environment for women to succeed. So it never ends. My best opportunity for pushing back on this federal government, the way that it operates in Joe Biden's America, is to take them to court and sue them. But unfortunately, what happens then is I end up on defense all day, just trying to protect my people from the high inflation, from the high taxes, the high food costs that they're dealing with each and every day that hurt their budget so badly.
Governor, when we come back, does this not illustrate the disconnect between people who come off the East Coast or the West Coast, people who are in Washington, D.C., and that bubble and that whole social environment, many of whom have never even come to South Dakota, have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to timber. These are ideologues trying to project their views on your state. And do you think that you are uniquely, not necessarily qualified, but the way that you grew up, as your book points out, not my first rodeo, to see this and to fight it and confront it? That's my question when we return. We'll be right back. Welcome back, America. I think, Governor Kristi Noem, you're uniquely qualified by your upbringing in many ways to take on this federal Leviathan. I think so because I've read your book. I see how you grew up. You had a very tough father. You worked on the farm. You became independent very, very quickly. The book is not my first rodeo. Explain that.
You know, I think it is interesting. Right now, this country's hungry for a little bit of the American West. And I think when we're having this discussion about our history, the importance of civil debate and discussion, and really we're pushing back on critical race theory and those who would remake our republic, it's good to reflect back on the way of life that built this country. And a lot of the blessings I had as a child growing up in the West on a ranch, making a living off the land, producing the food with my family that feeds this country, there's lessons to be learned from that. You know, I think one of the best gifts that my parents ever gave me was impossible things to do. You know, I think we're crippling our children in this country, Mark, by doing everything for them. We've got parents and grandparents who think they need to get up every day and protect their kids. My parents did the exact opposite. What they did is prepared me for life, gave me hard things to do, which created us as kids to be problem solvers, gave us confidence to take up the next biggest challenge in front of us. So those life lessons that I learned growing up are things I think we need to come back to and appreciate about America that built America. And we need this next generation to turn around the agenda that the left has grabbed a hold of that would cause us to lose our liberties. And so this story, you know, people heard a lot about me probably during the pandemic because Rachel Maddow and Elizabeth Warren and all the liberals were calling me dangerous and irresponsible and reckless. I want people to read this book and to really understand why I made the decisions that I made, why I believe in our Constitution, why I was so focused on trusting people, letting them use personal responsibility. It really is the way that our government was intended to function. And it created an environment in South Dakota now that I believe is a testimony to the country. Our state is bringing hope to people because we just proved that what we as conservatives always believed, that it works. And all we need to do is now point to the consequences of what adhering to those principles, what those consequences are and what they can bring and the success that they yield for pursuing the American dream for so many people across this country.
How and why did you get into politics? You explain it in the book.
When I was young, going to college, my dad was killed in an accident. He was 49 years old at the time. And it was tragic for our family. He was kind of Superman. He worked all the time, even when we were on vacation, it was hard work. But when we lost him, I ended up quitting college, coming home, taking over all the businesses. We had a very large operation at the time. I remember just a few months after he passed away, I had all these people working for me. We were trying to figure out how to get a crop in the ground and get through calving season with our cattle herd. And I got a letter in the mail from the IRS that said we owed death taxes. And I couldn't figure that out at the time. I was 22 years old and could not see how a family could have a tragedy and all of a sudden owe the federal government taxes on everything that family owned and threatened to take away their family business. So it made me angry. I started to show up at meetings, got passionate about tax reform. If you remember back then, Mark, Tom Daschle was the U.S. Senate Majority Leader, and he was from South Dakota. And so I started going to all of his meetings and talking about the importance of tax reform. So I'd been raised by a dad that said, you don't complain about things, you fix them. And that's really the only reason I got involved in government and politics. I decided I couldn't just complain about tax policy. I needed to show up and be one of those who was willing to help fix it.
And as a governor, I'm sure you're looking over the horizon and you're seeing so many of the problems that your citizens face and your state faces are as a result of the federal government, just the ability to run a farm and a ranch, The price of fertilizer is through the roof, which is harming farming. The price of tractors, the price of everything is through the roof. So from time to time, do you take a gaze over that horizon and look at the federal government and say, somebody's needed to put their foot down against this administration?
All the time. I've lived with this for years. There's something special about farmers. They go to the bank, they borrow money, they go buy seed, fertilizer, chemical, they put it in the dirt. They hope it rains and that a few months later there'll be something there they can go pick up and sell and pay their bills. You could farm for 20 years, make a good living. You can have one bad one and lose everything. I've been talking about our food policy for the last 15 to 20 years as a national security issue. I've watched as other countries that are our enemies have come in and bought up our fertilizer companies, our chemical companies, bought our processing systems, and now they're buying land all across the United States of America. They're not dummies. China's not just strengthening their military and stealing our IP and manipulating their currency. They're also buying up our food supply chain. And when they own it, they will control us. And that is imperative that this White House figure out that we need to continue to grow our own food, keep farmers out on the land, and every one of their energy policies, every one of their regulations they put out cripples the ability of the United States of America to feed itself, and that is one of our greatest national security threats that we have in the near future.
Chrissy Noem, you're a breath of fresh air. Really, the book is great. Not my first rodeo, Lessons from the Heartland. And I hope everybody watching will get your book and learn a whole lot about you, because I think you're a figure for the national scene, if you're not already. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too, Mark.
We'll be right back.